Hello, everyone. It's Nigel Seeley, and it's the latest edition of Betting Weekly Game Bet Match, the number one tennis betting podcast brought to you in association with Bet Rivers. It's the second week of ATP Tour 1000 action. We begin now actually, with the Western and Southern Open, better known as the Cincinnati Open. It's another ATP Tour 1000 event, and I'm delighted to say joining me to look ahead at the tournament this week is our senior ATP Tour handicapper. It's Sean Calvert. Sean, back-to-back ATP Tour 1000s. Is that good for betting or is that not good for betting? How do you fare going into this stretch in the Canada?
I find it a bit easier, actually, with one tournament to focus on. I think it's a bit easier than having three different tournaments, different places, different surfaces, different conditions, all that sort of stuff, three different weather forecasts to look at, all that sort of stuff. I find it actually slightly easier. Once you've got a handle on conditions, and there's only one tournament, I actually think it's easier. I think it's tougher for the players. It's tougher for the players to go from somewhere like Toronto to somewhere like Mason, Ohio, where they play this Cincinnati Masters. That's tricky. But from a betting point of view, I think one tournament is easier because, as I say, you can focus a bit easier.
Yep, it's the tournament's actually started now. The scheduling's been a bit of a nightmare for us over here to record. We couldn't record it earlier today, so we missed the outright market. So it's been quite difficult for us. But before we go into the matches which you've highlighted for tomorrow's play on Monday. What are the conditions like here? I've got a message from one of our Twitter followers, a guy called Dylan Strasberg. Dylan Strasberger, he is out there. He says weather looks to be much cooler than it normally is this year. Tuesday and Friday especially. Showers expected Monday. Besides that, should be a dry tournament, but a lot cooler conditions. Is that similar to what you've got, Sean?
No.
Oh, well, Dylan, this is from Dylan's window. Didn't tell me he's there.
He can't see from his window what's happening in 4 days, surely. I'll come on to the conditions because this is complicated. They've changed the court surface at the Lindner Family Tennis Centre again. It used to be played on a Deco turf. Then they changed it to a lake hold. Now they've changed it again to a green set Grand Prix for this year. They've just done this recently in the last sort of couple of months or whatever. So now it's a green set Grand Prix surface, which is the same. I think it's the same surface they use for the Australian Open. It's certainly the same company. Whether it's the exact same surface, I'm not sure, but it's a green set rather than a lake hold. So we're in the unhappy position of guessing what speed it's going to be. The other problem is with Cincinnati, and most of these Masters 1000 tournaments actually, the different courts play different speeds, and that can be due to how much sun a particular court gets compared to another court. Because in years gone by in Cincinnati, there's been a big difference between the sort of grandstand court and the outside courts. And that's the same of quite a few tournaments as well. Often the center court plays a little bit slower and the outside courts play a little bit quicker. That's usually the case in Toronto. There's 238 meters of altitude at Mason, Ohio. So the ball does normally zip around. It's usually kind of regarded as fairly lively conditions. They play with the Wilson US Open balls, which are usually regarded as the sort of quickish balls. But as Dylan will tell you, the court speed, the conditions, it's going to depend on the weather. The forecast I saw said thunderstorms were around early in the week, and then from Wednesday to Saturday, it's going to be about 29 degrees. Perhaps that's what he means by a bit cooler. For him, that's probably slightly cooler, but because it can be 34, 35, 36. It can be pretty hot in Cincinnati. So that's perhaps what he means. It's slightly cooler than the really, really hot times that we've had in Mason, Ohio. So in short, we don't really know about the conditions. It's a brand new surface. I would expect it to be a sort of medium to medium quick, but that's just an assumption, and it does depend on the weather.
If we look at the former winners here, it isn't usually top loaded with your big names, especially in recent years. I mean, Novak Djokovic only won this tournament twice. He's making his comeback from the Wimbledon defeat here. He's number 2 seed. We'll come on to him in a minute. But Borna Coric won it last year, beat Tsitsipas. We've had Raonic we had Raonic in the final at 22.
We had Tsitsipas, didn't we, last year?
Yeah, Goffin as well reached the final in 2019. Dimitrov has won it. Cilic has won it. So it's a tournament that does throw up some big price winners, isn't it?
Yeah, the trends are pretty strong, actually. Only one of the last 9 number 1 seeds has won this tournament. As you said, massive prices. Borna Coric 300 to 1, Raonic 100 to 1 finalist, Goffin finalist 80s. Medvedev was 33 to 1 when he won here. So was Dimitrov. Cilic was 40-1 when he won here, as you said. Another interesting trend is that the last man to win the Canada Masters and Cincinnati was Rafael Nadal back in 2013. Prior to that, you have to go back another 10 years to Andy Roddick, who did it in 2003. And they're the only two men to have done it this century. So whoever wins Toronto, they're quite unlikely to win Cincinnati as far as the trends are concerned. Qualifiers don't have a particularly great record here. Only one semi-finalist since 1994. That was Dolgopolov back in 2015. As far as underdogs are concerned, it's pretty decent tournament in round one, especially 38% of the dogs win in round one on average in Cincinnati and 33% overall.
Do you think that's because the players have gone deep the week before? Because he's usually in the Canada behind, obviously, what we're seeing here in Canada. They've come back, they've gone deep, and they've got to play another tough match in a short period of time.
Yeah, quite possibly, because the US Open is only around the corner now, isn't it? We'll come on to that in a minute with some of the matches that I've selected, but and it's very different conditions, because if you think back to last year when they played in Montreal, which is still played on the Deco turf surface, and it was pretty slow. I think Carreno Busta won it last year at some big price, and it was really slow. You're going from quite a sort of chilly-ish sort of 20, 22 degrees in Montreal on a Deco turf. A couple of days later, you're playing round one in at slight altitude in Cincinnati, where it's generally much hotter. So it is quite difficult to go from the one to the other, because the conditions are quite different.
Yeah, so I would say the favourites be very aware. Look at anyone who's gone quite deep this week in Canada, and they may be worth opposing tomorrow. It's very, very hard for people to replicate the form from this week in Canada into Cincinnati. Two very good tournaments, two ATP 1000, the best there is other than the majors. So tough opponents, and if you go deep, it may not look at the form book. You might not go with the form book in this tournament. Like I say, the tournament's actually started already on Sunday. The first round has actually started, so the matches are in play now. Head to the Bet Rivers website. You'll see all the outright markets and the match bets. But as we currently stand, we don't have any future prices. But I'll give you the odds that these were going in to the first round, which started today. And Novak Djokovic is making a comeback from Wimbledon. Has been out of action for a month. The last time he won this tournament in 2020, he's bidding for his third tournament win. That 2020 win was in New York, though, when the tournament was played in New York. He's the favourite at plus 175. Carlos Alcaraz, we worried about him. We told you about him last week, the problems with him. We thought they may be someone to fade, and the dangers of taking such low odds. He's the second favourite here, and probably a tougher draw. He's plus $2, so 2-1 for Carlos Alcaraz. It's a big tournament for the Spaniard. He has to get to the final and hope Djokovic is in there. He has to at least get to the final to be able to be the number one seed, to confirm he's the number one seed for the US Open. So a lot of pressure on him there to be the number one seed for the US Open. The third favourite is Daniil Medvedev, who in the early part of the year was incredible on the hard court. He proclaimed himself to be the hard court specialist, didn't he? He said he was the king of hard courts.
And is that what he called himself?
Well, he's called the hard court specialist, so I'm calling him the king of hard courts.
Oh, okay.
But he won 4 titles.
He wasn't last week, was he?
No, exactly. When we put our money down, he won 4 titles from February to April, but since then his form hasn't been as great as it was. But he's won this tournament as well before. He's plus 550. So those three dominate the market. Give us a little bit of the draw, where you think the value is, and the different brackets, where you think there's an easier bracket or a difficult bracket. And who do you think is the person to come out of the draw? And obviously Alcaraz and Djokovic, the perils of taking them at such low odds.
Yeah, same as last week. We said, didn't we? Alcaraz was too short in our opinion. Proved to be the case. I did say it's not easy for someone just to, a 19, 20-year-old lad to win Wimbledon and then just hoover up all the rest of the tournaments as well, especially given the clay swing that he had and the problems that he had at the French Open with, physicality and stuff. But mentally, it's very difficult once you've won Wimbledon. Obviously, I'm not speaking from experience here, but when you've won Wimbledon, you've had everything that's gone on around it, all the interviews, and everyone's after you, and then all of a sudden you've got to start basically from scratch again on a different surface. It's very, very difficult, even for the experienced guys, as Novak Djokovic sort of showed last year when he looked like he was going to win everything, and then it all went wrong for him, didn't it? After Wimbledon, he didn't win the Olympics he hoped to, and then he found it a lot for him physically and probably mentally as well. And that's the same with Alcaraz, because he didn't look good last week, did he? He didn't look good at all. And if you take Alcaraz out of this top half of the draw, I think that's extremely open top half. I've taken a chance on Tiafoe at 50-1. The reason being, I know he's not been in the best of form since winning that title on the grass in Stuttgart, but it's going to come for him. He's got a lot of points to defend at the US Open. He wants to show the American public that last year wasn't a flash in the pan at the US Open when he made it to the semis, I think it was, lost to Alcaraz. I think this is a good draw for him, assuming he doesn't lose to Greek Sport tonight, which is my absolute nightmare, talking about something that's going to happen on Monday night, which then gets people watch it on Tuesday and he's already lost. That's a nightmare scenario. That could happen. It's possible. But a 50-1 in this section, Casper Ruud, I think it's too quick for him here. He hasn't got a great record here, and he looked injured last week. He had a medical timeout. I think it was a hip or back problem against Davidovich Fokina last week. For me, he's quite easily overlooked, Casper Ruud. I'm just looking at the rest of the draw now. Tsitsipas, lost in straight sets to Monfils last week. Rublev's done well here in the past, but for me, I would prefer him in slower conditions. I wouldn't be that concerned about him. I think Tiafoe, if he got to the latter stages, could handle Andrei Rublev. Aside from that, it's not. Korda's another possibility. 80-1. He'll probably go and win it at 80-1 this week after letting us down a few times. He's another one in with a chance in that top section. Tommy Paul, possibly, but he's probably gone a bit deep in Canada for my liking. So I think that top section is open. I've taken Tiafoe, as I say, each way 50-1.
With regards to Carlos Alcaraz, obviously he's the second favourite. He's always a popular bettor with Bet Rivers. A lot of public support for him. He's not coming into good form. He has brilliant form. He's had a bad tournament last week. Looked a bit tired. He's got to come here. Then he's got to go to Flushing Meadow and he's got to defend his US Open crown. Is there a possibility that he might sort of say, let's just go deep here, but just take it a little bit easy and just contain our energy and our fitness for the US Open? Is that a possibility? And that's a danger if you're taking 2-1.
I think it's very possible if he's carrying some sort of injury. If he's carrying any kind of physical issue that we don't know about, and he's not going to tell us about these, not until after the fact anyway. If he's carrying some sort of physical issue, then that's certainly something that is quite likely with a lot of these guys, not just Alcaraz, but a lot of these guys, if they are carrying something, they're not fully fit, and they think, well, let's just see how it goes this week, not press it too much. Yeah, that's possible, but I mean, I just think for Alcaraz, this is very difficult for him to lift himself again after that massive effort at Wimbledon and everything that's gone on before. He might prove me wrong and go in and win this tournament and win the US Open. Yeah, that's quite possible, but not for me at these prices.
Is that another reason why you think there potentially could be a lot of big price winners or big price finalists here? Because of the scheduling, that it's 2 weeks before the US Open, not the big guys might be absolutely might put it all in Canada and then come here and think, what, I've just had a real tough week. Let's just rest a little bit. And that sort of may correlate to the fact that we've got these big sort of 38% of dogs winning in the opening round, and we've got some big 100-1, 200-1 finalists.
Quite possible, yeah. The other thing is the conditions here are tricky. I think that's one of the main reasons Djokovic hasn't won so often. It's normally been an attacking player's court, but over the years, I mean, it's changed a lot in recent years, and there's that little bit of altitude as well. A lot of the players have found the balls and the conditions just quite difficult to control, very lively. A lot of big servers have sort of gone well here, going back a few years. And there's also that element of motivation. If you've had a long Wimbledon, possibly a long French, gone deep in Canada, yeah, there's probably is that element of just, well, I don't want to exert myself too much before the US Open. Yeah, that's possible.
It's a tough part of the calendar this week, this time of year. Obviously, after Wimbledon, you have 2 1,000 events back to back, and then the US Open in 2 weeks' time. So really, this one here looks one for me that I think you might want to fade the front two in the betting, Alcaraz and Djokovic, and that Tiafoe bet of 50-1. And it pains me to say it, Sean, but Sebastian Korda is going to win it, and that could just see it. I know he's going to win it. I think we've got to have a save on him just for that eventuality. We have to. Only 80 we've got to take.
I saw 80-1 this morning. I don't know whether that's still about, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. The only thing that put me off is just he's still, I don't think, quite right. I think something's not quite right with him. He lost to, was it Vukic, wasn't it, last week? It'll probably click. It's definitely going to click for him at some point. I just hope it's not this week. For your sake, I know you've backed him. For your sake, I hope it's at Flushing Meadows. But
I've given up on that. I've given up on that.
I think it's possible. I think it's very possible because if he gets a decent draw, wins a couple of matches, I think it's just in his head at the minute. I think once he's got a couple of good matches under his belt, maybe got a good win over a decent player, you'll see a different quarter, I think.
Let's hope so. I'm going to have to bet him at 80-1 now, just for a small bit of interest. But he obviously starts off against the defending champion, Borna Coric, which is
I bet Sinner's going to win as well, by the way, that we backed in the last 2 hardcourt Masters series. He's going to win Toronto now, isn't he, most probably?
Well, he's a fade here, obviously, if he wins Toronto. He's in action, Toronto, a little bit later against Alex de Minaur. De Minaur beats our pick, Daniil Medvedev as well. So it's been a bit of a frustrating few weeks on the future market, but we're going to go for Tiafoe here at 50-1. We can't put it down as an official pick, though, unfortunately, because the action's in play. But hopefully you can get onto the Bet Rivers website and you can take a bit of that. And also, if you have been following this show and you've seen our allegiance to Sebastian Corda, I would suggest you have a half unit stake on him as well to cover that disappointment if he does get to the final as well. But I can understand Sean's argument there that the top half of the draw of Alcaraz is very weak if you took him out, and obviously the bottom half does look a little bit tougher with the opponents in with Djokovic there. Surprising to me though that Djokovic is the favourite after the Alcaraz beat him, but we'll see where the money goes over the next couple of days, and myself and Sean will look at the outright market as the tournament progresses here on Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. Anyway, we have 5 matches we're going to talk about. The first match is an interesting one. I always say an interesting one because I think they are interesting ones. And I can see why Sean has put this one in straight away. It's Tommy Paul, who made it through to the semi-finals in Toronto last week. He got beat by Jannik Sinner in the semi-final. He's up against Kekmanovic. Kekmanovic here has a very, very, very commanding head-to-head record. He leads 3-0 against the American. They beat the Australian Open in 2022, where Kekmanovic won in 3 straight sets, 7-6, 7-5, 7-6 in the second round. They also met in 2020 in New York, where Kekmanovic won 6-4, 6-2. So I think that's when New York.
What's the other one then? I've only got 2.
It's a pro match, UTR pro match. Where
in the UTR. Okay,
won as well there. But that New York event, I think, was here, wasn't it? It was Cincinnati the year it was played in New York. Is that correct? I think it is.
If it was 2020, I think it was. Yeah,
I think it was his tournament. Kekmanovic won that, so he leads 3-0 in the head-to-head. Tommy Paul must be absolutely exhausted after his semi-final run in Canada. You've said of the dangers of betting people who have gone from Canada to this tournament. So plus 180 Kekmanovic. I'm guessing that you're very heavily involved on that.
Yeah, but I think Kekmanovic is definitely the bet here for the reasons that you've just stated, really. Kekmanovic obviously has had more time to prepare, having lost early on in Toronto. Anyone that watched Tommy Paul against Jannik Sinner last night would have seen him struggling with a back injury, had a medical timeout against Sinner, and it kind of faded away a little bit in the second set of that match. Tommy Paul, now that immediately says to me, he's obviously carrying an injury now, isn't he? Is he going to be putting it in Cincinnati ahead of the US Open? He may be, but I would certainly question it. So he's injured, potentially, or certainly not fully fit anyway. The head-to-head, as you said, is not great. If you look at the stats of the head-to-head, which I've only looked at the 2 sort of the stats the meetings that we have stats for. And in terms of service points won, return points won, Kekmanovic, pretty dominant, really, 107 to 93. So the matchup has been no problem for Kekmanovic in the past. He won, as you said, at the Australian Open straight sets. He was a 2.79. That's plus 179 underdog when he beat Tommy Paul in Melbourne. We were successful last week, weren't we? Hurkacz, we had the overs, didn't we? Hurkacz and Kekmanovic last week. Again, it was his serve that let him down in that match, Kekmanovic. He actually won more second serve points than Hurkacz did, so he was better off the ground. But he served poorly, 51% overall. First serves in, and just 36% in set 2, which is woeful. So that really set him back, and that kind of explains the sort of the way that match ended. As you've said in the past, and I agree, Kekmanovic is a tough guy to kind of call. He's either playing well or he isn't. You never really know when. But at these odds, I took 2.95 a Bet Rivers earlier on. I'm not sure what he is now, but I'm happy to take Paul on here for sure.
Well, they're nothing like that anymore. I quoted you a price here that I've got on my graphic, but as I've looked at the Bet Rivers website, that line has even gone even further now. It's plus 150 for Kekmanovic. So plus 150 for Kekmanovic. Tommy Paul is minus 230. So there's been a big move. Sean is already on. The spread is 2.5. Kekmanovic receiving 2.5 is minus 106. Tommy Paul minus 2.5 is minus 121. The total is 22.5. With what you said with the injuries and with all the concerns about Kekmanovic, with Paul, the problems of playing last week and the head-to-head record, I think you might even go shorter than plus 150. Would you still be tempted to play at plus 150? If, you've taken the big price now, but a lot of people here wouldn't have got that price. Would you still be happy to play at that odds?
I think we can play him at plus 150. I don't know whether I get much shorter than that, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot will depend on how Tommy Paul turns up. People are there, aren't they? People have people watching the warm-ups and all that sort of stuff. It depends how he shapes up, but I think there's a very decent chance that Paul puts in a less than 100% committed effort here for sure.
There he goes. That's the first one. It's an underdog win for Mimor Kekmanovic, and now plus 150 to beat Tommy Paul. We think Tommy Paul is definitely a fade this week in his match in Cincinnati, which is scheduled for tomorrow. Head to the Bet Rivers website. You'll see the time there. You won't have any problems with the early starts because of these matches is stateside. So you'll see that. And you'll also see that Bet Rivers have a whole host of special markets available for you. And if you do place the bet on this match, you can live stream it from your tablet or your home computer or your laptop. The next match, we move on. Safiullin against Jarry. Roman Safiullin against Nicolas Jarry. Roman Safiullin had a pretty decent Wimbledon. He reached the last 16 where quarterfinal, sorry, he got beat by Yannick Sinner. Jarry did okay in Los Cabos, beaten by Tsitsipas in the quarterfinals, but got beat in the first round in Toronto last week by Humbert in a match which was a wild match. Safiullin here is plus 135. Nicolas Jarry is minus 167. The head-to-head is one win to Safiullin, which was on the clay in Madrid this year. 6-2, 3-6, 6-3 he won in Spain. Safiullin, good Wimbledon. This is his first tournament since Wimbledon. How's he going to fare in this one against an opponent that's had a pretty good season? Is up to a career high 27 in the rankings.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Jarry in sort of quick conditions. Hugo Humbert showed it last week in a match that incredibly didn't feature a tiebreak, given those two. Should have done, by the way. Humbert missed an absolute sitter of a smash to level the score at 5-all in the first set, but I'm over that now.
I don't know about that. I'm sure you'll be cursing him when you bump into one of these tennis tournaments soon.
Yeah, well, he owes me a few on Bear, that's for sure. I think Safiullin can. If Safiullin's beaten Jarry on clay at altitude in Madrid, where you would expect the conditions to be perfect for Nicolas Jarry, but Safiullin beat him, and he won 19% more points on second serve that day, Safiullin, than Jarry. If you can move Jarry around, get him hitting on the move, that's really all you've got to do. And it's much easier to do on hard courts than it is on the clay. Obviously, he has more time to move himself around on the clay. But Humbert did it really well. Humbert moving him side to side. He's not anywhere near as effective. If he can stand and deliver, Jarry, then you've got problems. But Safiullin has shown before that he's beaten Jarry in Jarry's favored conditions, basically. Safiullin's also got a small but decent record against big servers. He beat Ivo Karlovic on grass. He beat Matteo Berrettini on hard court. And those are the only matches he's played against big servers. So he's shown that he doesn't mind the pace coming at him, and he's able to redirect it. He's able to move these guys around. And he's able to get the better of them. Neither of these guys have played Cincinnati before, so it's not like Jarry's come in here with a wealth of experience. My only concern with Safiullin is that, as you said, he hasn't played since Wimbledon. I wonder what he's been doing since then. If he's been diligently practicing away on the hard courts, getting himself ready for this, then I really think he's got a very good chance of winning here. If he hasn't, he might be a bit rusty. That might cost him. But I took Safiullin at 2.5 plus 150 earlier on here.
And again, you've got the early value. It's now plus 135, but we still think that's a play here. The spread is 2.5 start for Safiullin on the games. Minus 132, plus 104 for Jarry, giving up 2.5. And the total, very high when you expect with Jarry matches, 23.5 here All the others are around about 21, 22.5. But Jarry matches are always quite high. 23.5 is the total, with over -103 and under -125. Now, the next match is amazing. Really, this is the first round of an ATP or a 1000 event, and we've got a match up between Matteo Berrettini and Felix Auger-Aliassime. Two players have had their fair share of injuries this year. Berrettini definitely on the upwards and coming on the comeback trail. And poor old Felix Auger-Aliassime is really struggling with his form, and that's reflected in the odds here. Matteo Berrettini is -225. Felix Auger-Aliassime is +137.5. The Canadian is on a 4-match losing streak. Matteo Berrettini, in quick conditions, you've always got to fancy him. And when you look at the head-to-head, it's very overwhelming in favour of Berrettini. He leads this one 4-1. And I don't think he's ever played a match against Felix where Felix isn't in the form or in the fitness levels that he is now. The spread here is 2.5. Berrettini -2.5 is -122. And the total, surprisingly quite high, really, when you consider the injury concerns and the fitness levels of Felix Auger-Aliassime. It's 23.5 with under the favourite at -129. It's a sorry state of affairs, isn't it, for Felix? I mean, some of the defeats, he hasn't had the greatest of seasons, but the last defeat in his home tournament against Purcell was very, very disappointing. His performance at Wimbledon against Mo was disappointing. Watanuki in Washington was another disappointing match. But I think now the odds for him to win this match are reflecting on what the current state of his condition is at the moment.
Yeah, I'm slightly tempted to. I'm not going to, but I'm slightly tempted to back Felix here on the basis that I'm not sure he can continue to be this bad. At some point, it's gonna come back to him, but I'm not sure when. Against Purcell last week, I mean, he didn't create a single break point chance against Purcell. Purcell won 90% of his first serve points against Felix last week. This is Purcell. This isn't John Isner or whatever. And similar against Watanuki, didn't break Watanuki at all. And that's despite Watanuki missing his first 9 first serves of the match. I was watching that match because we had set one overs, didn't we? And Watanuki could not buy a first serve. I've never seen a player miss his first 9 first serves of the match, and some of them were miles out. It became obvious later on when he had a medical timeout for his shoulder problems. That was probably affecting him, but he won 84% of his first serve points against Felix. So Felix is doing nothing on return against guys like Purcell and Watanuki. Some of his returning it's woeful. It's back fence stuff. And that sort of leads me to possibly think about the set one overs here. As you said, the head-to-head is 4-1 to Berrettini, but I think a couple of those were at Laver Cup, weren't they? If I remember rightly off the top of my head.
I've moved on to the next
Doesn't
screen
matter.
now. I'll find it for you.
I think I'll find it. At least one of them was, if not two. But the fact that Berrettini's won 4-1, it doesn't belie the actual stats, because in terms of the service points won, return points won totals, it's actually Felix that leads by 102 to 98. But Felix has failed to take his break point chances in this match. So he's only taken 28% of his break opportunities against Berrettini, compared to Berrettini, who's taken 38%, and Berrettini's won both tiebreaks. That's how he comes to lead the head-to-head 4-1, despite being behind in the stats. Berrettini, you would think in these conditions, which I assume, we don't know how this surface is going to play, but I imagine it's going to be sort of medium quick. And with Felix just unable to return even the likes of Watanuki and Purcell serve, you wouldn't have thought he's going to do so well with Berrettini's delivery. So it's just a lean here, but I quite like over 12.5 games. It was plus 205, 3.05 at Bet Rivers earlier. That would be my way of thinking in this encounter. 2
of their matches have been on Laver Cup, and one match they had was here in Cincinnati, which was the win for Felix. Felix won.
He actually plays better here. Sorry, mate. He actually plays better here in Cincinnati than he does in Montreal, Canada, Montreal and Toronto. He's been some of his matches have been shocking in Canada.
What were you going to say there?
No, I wasn't.
Shocking.
I wasn't. I was going to say shocking. I just kind of forgot what I was saying. But so it doesn't surprise me that he's still struggling in Canada. He doesn't seem to be able to live up to the expectation, and he's quite a decent record here. I think he's 6-4 win-loss here, Felix. So I think he's quite relieved to sort of leave Canada and the expectation behind and come here, where conditions have suited him in the past. I certainly couldn't back Berrettini at that price. That's way too short for me.
Yes, and plus 205 a tiebreak in the first set here.
Okay, that's probably a lean there for me.
Yeah,
then.
Berrettini matches notoriously high in terms of games, and especially in the first set, two players going toe to toe. If Felix can live with him, then obviously that might be a bit of interest. Plus 205, small lean for Sean. 11 o'clock a.m. The matches start obviously Eastern time, so check the BetRivers website. The order of play for Monday will be known in a few hours' time, and BetRivers will update that on their website as well. We're talking about players to fade and players that are coming out of Toronto be exhausted. Well, Alex de Minaur, the way that he plays, the way he runs down the court, he must be absolutely exhausted. He's reached for the final this evening where he takes on Yannick Sinner. He could turn up here as the champion. He's a big outsider to do that, but he could turn up here as champion. And given the record of the champions from Canada then coming into Cincinnati, he looks a very low price at minus 195 to beat Jeff Wolf, who is plus 155 here. They met once before. De Minaur won it, but coming into a tournament where he's gone so far deep, you can imagine him leaving a lot of it on the courts in Toronto rather than bringing his A game across here to Cincinnati.
Yeah, not just there as well. He made the final the week before as well, didn't he? In Los Cabos, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In extreme heat and humidity. So de Minaur's played a ton of tennis lately. Without counting the Toronto final that he hasn't played yet, he's played 27 sets already this hard court swing. But whereas Jeff Wolf's played only 16. I imagine he's certainly going to play at least another 2, potentially 3 tonight, de Minaur. So he's closing in on 30 sets. He's almost double the amount of tennis that Jeff Wolf's played this hard court swing. And this hard court swing's only 3 weeks old. So you would imagine if you're Alex de Minaur, as you said, the way he plays does rely an awful lot on him being really fit, being really energetic, making a lot of balls, doing a lot of running. He can't get away with being underpowered and fatigued. We've seen it from him before. I seem to recall Indian Wells was a good example when I think he won Acapulco, didn't he, or made the final of Acapulco? Then came to Indian Wells and he was absolutely exhausted. He got beaten easily by Martin Fucsovic. So this is an opportunity, I think, for Jeff Wolf, and this is his home tournament. He's from Cincinnati. Jeff Wolf, born and raised, went to Ohio State University, who he played college tennis for. I think he ended up being the number 1 college tennis player of I think it was 2019 when he played for Ohio State. So this is a guy who's going to be hugely motivated. You would have thought he'd be much more motivated than de Minaur, who's going to come here on fumes. I also wonder a bit with Jeff Wolf because he played really well in the first few weeks. Semis in Atlanta, quarterfinals in Washington, D.C. Then he had an absolute shocker last week in Toronto against Davidovich Fokina. I wonder if he was just kind of saving himself a little bit for his home tournament, wanting to get here nice and early, get prepared for that, having known that he's gone deep in the previous 2 tournaments. That's my conspiracy theory on that. I feel like
I love a conspiracy
that's
theory.
A possible.
Love it. That's enough for me, Sean. I'm hitting the button now.
I think it's likely, isn't it? It is likely.
I think these things happen. I remember speaking to a few ex-tennis players. I'm not going to name who they are, and they all said they've done these things over the years. They've just rested certain tournaments, and
I think you have to, don't you? Sometimes,
yeah. And I think when you read into it and you look at what you've just said there, this is why this podcast is so good. What you just said there about the fact that he's a local lad, the fact that he's coming here and he may have not putting the effort in as much last week to save himself. This is pearls of wisdom that it's great, and the fact that
it's a theory, that's all it is.
It's a theory, but it's a bloody good one. So I think it's a great theory. So I'm buying it. So I'm in. No worry, no more. I didn't need any more convincing.
Okay, I'll give you the stats as well if you want. Sure. If you want to throw them in. So far, this hard court summer, Jeff Wolf, including the fact that he got a heavy beating last week from Davidovich Fokina, he's still on a service points won, return points won total of 104.4, which is very respectable indeed. De Minaur's a couple of points ahead of that. But as I say, his game relies an awful lot on energy and fitness. And I will take my hat off to him and say, fair play if he comes here and beats Jeff Wolf, having gone so deep in the last 2 tournaments. That'll be some effort from him. But you would think that Wolf would be more motivated here.
Yeah, I'm also tempted by Wolf plus 3.5 on the spread here. It's quite low though, minus 148, but I'd probably take 2.5 as well.
What price is he now? I took him at 2.7 earlier on. Plus
155 you can get for Jeff
still
Wolf.
Pretty decent.
Yeah, minus 195 for Alex de Minaur. I think it's worth fading in a lot of markets. The total games here is 22.5. The first set could be quite close, but if de Minaur hits a brick wall, we don't know how long this match is going to go tonight. And if it goes close and he loses in a tight match, there's a lot of reasons to oppose Alex de Minaur in this one as well. So the spread is 3.5, but on the BetRivers website, you can just move the toggle down, get 2.5 for a bigger price, bit more juice in your price. I like that. I think JJ Wolf has got the crowd on his side. I think he's got the home support, and he's got an opponent that must be running on empty. The final match we're going to talk about is Lorenzo Musetti. He's minus 157 against Dan Evans, the recent winner in Washington. But then he went away to Canada, as we said in the last show. He got beat in the first round against the Canadian local lad. That match was interesting, though, wasn't it, Sean? We picked up, what's his name? What was the guy?
Diallo.
Diallo. We picked Diallo here at plus 150, or plus 160, I think it was. He went off to about plus 185. There was a huge negative for him. Lots of money for Dan Evans for that match, and Dan Evans
don't understand exhausted. That move. It's a weird move for me.
But it goes that match absolutely replicates the same kind of thinking that we've got for Tommy Paul here and Alex de Minaur. He's won the tournament. He's come to follow him. He's beaten round one. And Dan Evans, we don't know what's going to be. He's plus 125 here. Lorenzo Musetti's minus 157. Musetti leads 2-0 in the head-to-heads. But there was a strange market. Dan Evans went off around about minus 250 to win that match. It was bizarre.
I should have waited and got the bigger price. A
winner's a winner. Don't worry about
once waiting. I didn't get the value.
Cashing tickets that's all it's all about. As that sign says there, keep cashing those tickets. It doesn't matter. The price is important, obviously, but the amount of times it drifts or it goes against you. How many times you get messages from people saying it's this big drift against it? And you said before you actually quite like the drifters.
I don't mind it. I
prefer the four tops myself, but anyway.
You've completely thrown me now. What I was going to say.
I said you like the drifters. You like the way that sometimes you've said to me this before when we spoke about it. You don't mind if the market. Other people are just going, oh, he can't win.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. It worries me more the other way. If like a load of sort of prominent people have backed it and sort of tipped it, or whatever. That's when I don't like it. When everyone's thinking the same about a certain match, that's when it starts to worry me. I think if everyone thinks it's probably unlikely to happen. It tends to prove that way. But if it's drift, I don't mind a drift. Sometimes people get things very wrong and little rumors start and stuff, and people, next thing you know, it sort of snowballs. And no, it doesn't bother me that.
No bother about the drift. We have to see where this one goes. But Dan Evans didn't do the business last week, got beat by Diallo. Week before, won the tour. And which Dan Evans turns up this week?
I think this is too short. I think Musetti's price is too short here. I know he's got a 2-0 head-to-head, but both of those were on clay. And Dan Evans lost at least 2 sets that he should have won in those matches. Evans had 4 match points in one of the matches. I think it was the Barcelona one, which Musetti ended up winning something like 10-8 in the final set tiebreak. Evans had 4 match points in that. He should have won one of the other sets as well that he lost to Musetti on clay. He's actually won 10% more second serve points in those 2 matches on clay, Evans. So you could certainly argue he was the better man from the back of the court. And that's on Musetti's obviously favoured surface of clay. I think, I wasn't obviously at all surprised that Evans lost last week. He's won Washington DC after a shocking season. He's come in and won a 500. He's going to have a couple of celebratory drinks there, surely. So that didn't surprise me. But I feel like he's going to be back on it this week. He's had enough time. He's able to come here early and prepare. There's not much in the stats on outdoor hard. Main level 2023. Evans' service points, win return points, one totals 103. Musetti slightly ahead on 105, but I'm not sure that should make him about a 1.54.
Musetti's 159, so that's around about about 8 to 15.
Yeah, that's too short for me, considering the stats are fairly similar. Evans has just played his best tournament on a hard court. I'm concerned about having too many bets here because I don't know what the conditions are going to be like on this new green set surface. But I think Evans is certainly an underdog with possibilities. He's a lean. He's a lean for me. I prefer the other ones, but I wouldn't put anybody off backing Evans. I certainly would be fearful of backing Musetti at this price in this matchup.
Evans has actually gone out in the betting, has been speaking. He was plus 125 when we spoke, now out to plus 128. So there's an early move for Musetti here.
I think he was plus 140. He was plus 148 this morning. Evans.
Well, it's gone down and gone back to sort of where it should be. So around probably the market will settle around about plus 130. The handicap's 2.5. And Evans may be interested on that. With the 2.5 start minus 127, the total is 22.5. So they are the 5 matches we have spoken about here. We have 2 official picks for you. Is that correct, Sean?
We got 3, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
3.
So if you can just run through your picks for us.
Yeah, Kekmanovic to beat Tommy Paul. What's that, 2.5-ish now?
It's near down to
like
plus
that.
150, yep.
Safilan to beat Jarry, similar sort of price.
Yep.
And the final one, Jeff Wolf to beat Alex de Minaur.
So 3 dogs for you. Kekmanovic is currently plus 150, Ramos Safilan is plus 135, and Jeff Wolf is plus 155. If you look at the matches in action, we've only spoken about 5 matches, but some of the matches tomorrow are incredible. Kachanov against Andy Murray, Sebastian Corner against defending champion Borna Koric. We have Gael Monfils against Cam Norrie, Lehecka against Fritsch, Davidovich Fokina, Echeverry. I mean, just before we go on to that, just Davidovich Fokina's performance yesterday, Sean.
Oh.
I don't think did he hold serve once in that match?
He effectively tanked it, didn't he?
Oh.
It was really, really windy. Really windy. He couldn't keep it in play. Couldn't control it. He sort of tried a bit, and then he just thought, well, you know what? I'm not having this. Oh. And then he basically gave up. Started double faulting, serve volleying, just sort of hitting it into the back fence. He didn't fancy it, did he? Terrible. It was really windy. All de Minaur was doing really was just keeping the ball in play and waiting for him to miss, which didn't take that long. He must have hit about 40, 45 unforced errors.
Awful. And in his 3 games that he won in the second set, it was all breaks. He broke de Minaur's serve. A bizarre match. If you haven't watched it, was Davidovich.
The Medvedev one was bizarre as well. That's one of the worst matches I've seen Medvedev play in a long, long time. He was terrible against de Minaur.
Well, we'll have to see. De Minaur's been quite a lucky boy to get through. I won't see if his luck continues against Yannick Sinner this evening. Head to Bet Rivers website. You might be able to get that. We might even be. The play might be going on, so might be in play there. And also tomorrow we've got Alexander Zverev against Grigor Dimitrov. So a real action pack. I think it's one of the best first round lineups that I've seen outside a major this year. Really good tournament here in Cincinnati, and they're the favourites. And the lean for the tournament, Sean's tip, we obviously can't give an outright pick here because the tournament started. Francis Tiafoe is in action tonight. He's currently 50-1, and a little saver just for Game Bet Match sake on Sebastian Corda. Remember, there's 4 ways to follow us here on Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. You can download the podcast on your preferred podcast provider, Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Betting Weekly Studios at Because We Win. The subscriptions are going up and up. Well, thank you very much for subscribing to that. We've only been going for 2 weeks. We've got some really nice numbers on the figures there. Last week was our highest watch show on our YouTube channel since we've formed our own standalone. So thank you, the channel. So thank you very much for that. Some brilliant football content as well, soccer content. The handicappers have gone 6-0 this week, Sean. Not one losing pick on the opening week of the action.
Impressive.
Very impressive in France and on the Premier League as well. So some great action there. You also follow us on Twitter at Because We Win on our Twitter account, or X account, whichever it's called now. And you can follow us on our Instagram account, which is also at Because We Win. And myself and Sean will be in America for the US Open. You'll be having good content on there as well in a couple of weeks when we land in New York. Sean, thanks very much for joining me. You'll be back with me on Tuesday.
Yep.
You'll be back on Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll know what the conditions are like. We'll know exactly what the surface are like, and hopefully cash in more tickets. But I'm quite confident we're going to have a good week here. I like the idea of these trends with the underdogs, and I really like these 3 plays. So good luck for the week, everybody, if you're following us in, and take care. And we'll speak to you all again on Tuesday.